to introduce Marjorie Sims as moderator for the conversation. Marjorie is the managing director of Ascend at the Aspen Institute. In her role, Marjorie works closely with the executive director on the strategic direction of the program's vision, leads content development related to Ascend's areas of expertise, and oversees the development and implementation of all operations in support of achieving team goals. Marjorie has more than 20 years of experience in advancing the status of women and families at local, state, national, and international levels, as well as in expanding women's roles in leadership positions within philanthropy. With that, I'm excited to turn it over to Marjorie to get us started.
Thank you so much, Sierra, and welcome everyone. This is such an important and timely conversation. I'm Marjorie Sims again, Managing Director at Ascend, and on behalf of United Way Worldwide and the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, welcome to our session From Struggling to Stability, Elevating the Prospects of Families. Today's session very specifically speaks to the heart of the work that we all do collaboratively. Our organizations are mission aligned in the pursuit of disrupting generational poverty and ensuring more hopeful futures for children and their families, particularly those that are low income. So Ascend at the Aspen Institute was founded by Ann Mosley, and we are a catalyst and convener for diverse leaders working across systems and sectors to build intergenerational family prosperity and well-being. And we do this by intentionally focusing on children and the adults and their lives together, known often as a two-generation or whole family approach. We work with families as experts, as all of you do, and we engage those parents and caregivers in meaningful ways to design policies and programs that support them in their goals towards development holistically, that's integrated and is always equity focused. This family-centered lens helps immediately identify the family's needs and their goals, importantly, to inform integrations and alignment of programs that serve them, which maximizes long-term impact for families and their communities. At Ascend, we believe fully in co-creation, so we invest in bold leaders who are bridging divides and reimagining the levers of power to ensure all children and families thrive. We have a national fellowship program called the Aspen Ascend Fellowship Program. It's an 18-month cohort-based, values-based fellowship program. We currently have over 160 fellows in our national network. We have 650 network partners across the country. But we are so pleased and honored to be in partnership with United Way Worldwide and the campaign. We know together that the human cost of poverty starts early and persists, which is why this work with families who are struggling to make ends meet is so important. These families may be living just above the poverty line, and they are cashiers, waiters, childcare providers, and other members of our essential workforce across the country. United Way calls them ALICE, households, which are forced to make impossible choices each day where a flat tire could derail the entire family. They are asset limited, income constrained, and even though they are employed, they have a fragile hole on affording even the basic things their families need. But there are good things happening, bright spots across the country that give us hope, and we're delighted that we have, some experts here to share that with you today. These innovative strategies are making a difference, and we have the data to support that these approaches to improving the lives of children and families with low income are really having an impact across the country. So it is my pleasure to now introduce our panelists. So first, in partnership, and always an honor to be in partnership with Iola Fortune. She is the Vice President of the Impact Team at the United Way Worldwide. She provides oversight, strategic guidance, and support to team members managing key initiatives in education, economic mobility, and health. Welcome, Iola. And then Dr. Stephanie Hoops. She leads the National United for Alice movement, having shepherded the growth and success of United for Alice from a local pilot study in Morris County, New Jersey, to a national initiative with data for all 3,000 U.S. counties and partners in more than 30 states. Welcome, Stephanie. And then Scott Menninger. Scott is the Senior Director of Research and Evaluation at United Way of the National Capital Area, where he co-leads the Community Impact Division in advancing health, education, and economic opportunity for every person in the region, regardless of race, gender, income, or ability. Welcome, Scott. And next, delight to welcome Ken Odom. He has been president and CEO of United Way of Frederick County since August 2016. He is responsible for developing the organization's long-range vision and developing the business strategy to advance the organization's objectives. Welcome, Ken. And then we have Donna Pinto. Donna is the president and CEO of United Way of Pierce County and brings over 30 years of experience within the United Way network and a long history of working on behalf of children and their families. Welcome, Donna. And then Michelle Roars is Senior Vice President for Strategies for Alice. Michelle leads the strategic direction and day-to-day operations of United for Alice at work and United in care. Welcome, Michelle. And all of the bios, the more complete bios for all of our presenters will be shared in the chat. And I hope that you'll take time to read all of their wonderful accomplishments. These are really accomplished leaders, and I really want to honor and respect all of their expertise. So please take a look at their bios. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Iola to give us context for this work and this conversation that we'll be having this afternoon. So welcome, Iola, and thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Marjorie, so much for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be with you all today and to kick off this conversation with a little background about United Way. For those of you who may not be familiar with United Way, we are a global network with over 1,000 United Ways operating in 36 countries and territories. We engage community partners and volunteers and raise resources to fuel our work. Our mission is to mobilize the caring power of communities around the world so that every person in every community can thrive. And by resource mobilization, I'm specifically referring to the community partners and volunteers that we engage, the resources that we raise and strategically invest to implement solutions that address the most pressing needs and concerns of the people in the communities we serve. We focus both on creating systemic solutions that can address underlying conditions in communities and ensuring that community services and supports address the immediate needs of specific individuals and families. Next slide, please. We refer collectively to that work as community impact, and we work extensively in 4 core areas: youth opportunity, financial security, healthy community, and community resiliency. And data is essential to everything that we do. United Ways across our network use data regularly. This includes using quantitative aggregated data to understand the prevalence of issues and disaggregating that same data to understand specific gaps and disparities and who is most negatively impacted. It also includes qualitative data, so engaging residents in communities we serve to understand the lived experience. How are those issues impacting their everyday lives? Then using all of this information in tandem to identify priorities, create goals, develop strategies, and then make strategic investments in specific programs or initiatives. So all of this data is vital to the work that we do, and understanding, it starts with understanding the context and which we are operating. Next slide, please. As you can see, data on community needs, if you look at this funnel, this is what drives us. So first and foremost, it's understanding community and needs. It's also our donors and understanding what issues they're interested in supporting and making a difference on. It's understanding how our local United Ways, the local United Way is situated, the capacity, the expertise, the resources, the relationships, the positioning that they have informs the work, the specific work that United Ways do in communities. We are hyper local. And so all of those considerations, data first and foremost, drives the work and that United Ways do and how they show up and do that work. In our network, the most common area of work is youth opportunity. And for us, that refers to the specific strategies and approaches that United Ways across the globe are implementing to ensure that children and youth have the opportunities and supports they need for success in school, college, career, and life. This is followed by our work in financial security and then health. Most United Ways engage in work across these areas, work in multiple areas, and also implement what we call integrated approaches, like 2Gen, which is the work that brings us together with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and Ascend at the Aspen Institute, is our shared commitment to addressing these issues holistically. So many United Ways operate efforts similarly in their communities. Next slide, please. So just drilling down really briefly on those specific impact areas, you'll see that in youth opportunity, that data then informs the strategy that we develop. And so in youth opportunity, the most common strategies for United Ways working in this area focused on ensuring access to early childhood programs, increasing early literacy, supporting students with individualized supports and supporting their families by removing barriers to learning, non-academic barriers to learning, and enabling college and career access. Next slide. We look at what that work looks like in financial security. The most common areas of work include workforce development, increasing access to benefits and financial services. So for instance, helping people get banked, helping them file their taxes for free, and increasing access to housing. We know we have a housing crisis in this country. And so that's the third most common area of work. And it ranges from addressing homelessness to first-time home ownership. And if we go to the next slide, in health, United Ways are specifically focused on increasing access to health care services, but also ensuring that individuals access the social determinants of health. So you have the basics that enable you to live a healthy life, like ability to access nutritious food, ability to exercise, and living in healthy communities. So what is the built environment that enables health as well? The prevalence and importance of data to our community efforts is why having data like Alice is so vital. Data needs to drive purposeful action to be meaningful. The data and tools gathered by our colleagues at the United Way of Northern New Jersey is a tremendous benefit to United Ways across the United States that are leveraging this resource to inform their local work. And you'll hear from several of them on this call. Even more importantly, data needs to be framed and to tell a story that inspires action, which is perhaps the greatest value of this work. It gives context and creates meaning. To help illustrate this point and to transition to our colleagues who you'll hear from next at United Way of Northern New Jersey, we'll provide a brief video and then you'll hear from them.
I am Alice. I'm a divorced mom of two boys, ages 10 and 7. They live with me full time. Due to the birth of our second child, daycare costs exceeded what my salary was, so I quit my job to become a stay-at-home mom. When the divorce occurred, that created an extreme hardship. I had to start putting a lot of bills on credit cards. It wasn't a path I wanted to go down, but I had no choice. So even though I have this full-time career, it's still a struggle. It's still hard to make ends meet. You can't keep a family of 3 afloat on my salary alone. If we don't discuss this and we don't talk about it and we don't raise the awareness, it's never going to change.
You're muted, Iola.
Sorry, Marjorie. I was just transitioning and handing it back over to you to introduce our colleagues at United Way of Northern New Jersey, Michelle and Stephanie.
Wonderful, thank you. And with that context, I'd really love to welcome Stephanie and Michelle to share more details about the specific work of Alice and the origins and the impact. So Stephanie and Michelle, welcome.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having us and for spotlighting Alice. It's just amazing how this project has grown across the country, and to see the reception today is really gratifying. So thank you very much. We talk about Alice in a couple different ways, but I want to make sure everyone knows the acronym: Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And so it's the story. The video that Iola shared is one of our favorites. So it's important to think of the people that we know who are Alice. And you've probably run into many Alice workers already today, dropping your child off at childcare, getting a coffee, going to the bank, riding public transportation. These are literally people who help keep our economy running smoothly, and yet often struggle to support their own families. There's also a technical definition, and we'll get to that in more detail in a minute. I did want to share a little bit about United for Alice, so you know where the data is coming from. So next slide. So I'm Stephanie Hoops, and I'll be joined shortly with my colleague, Michelle Roars. So Alice, the technical definition is above the federal poverty level, but below just that bare minimum to live and work in the modern economy. And we call that the Alice Household Survival Budget. Often Alice earns too much to be eligible for public assistance, so makes it challenging to still get to meet those basic needs. And then another defining feature of Alice families is little or no savings. That makes it difficult for a day-to-day emergency, let alone saving for the future, investing in higher education or a house or retirement. So next. So United for Alice is a nonpartisan research organization, and we work across the country. We were founded and are still powered by United Way of Northern New Jersey. It's based on a rigorous methodology, which we review on a biennial basis, and we're in the middle of that right now, with over 300 research advisory committee members drawn from all the partner states where we work. So our data, our best practices, our assumptions, our data sources are reviewed on a regular basis, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. And as a result, have become seen as a leader around work in financial hardship across the country. So we work with partners across the country. Among the very best are United Ways, and you're going to hear from some of my favorites later in this webinar. But we work with foundations, companies, education institutions, and it's going to take everybody to make a difference for Alice. And it's wonderful to see the advocacy and innovation that is happening across the country. So you're in for a treat coming up. Next slide. So let's dig into some of the key pieces of the data. According to our official measure of financial hardship, the federal poverty level, 13% of households are struggling. But when you look at what it actually costs to live and work in each county in the country, Another 29% of households are Alice. So in total, across the country, it's 42% of households. It's a very different level of magnitude than 13% suggests. And so with 14%, with 42%, of course, we all know Alice. Alice workers, but Alice is often also our friends and family. So think about someone that you personally know. For me, it's my kids who are just starting off in the work world. And I've spent the last month helping my daughter find an apartment near where she works that she can afford. It's really hard starting out. It's also your parents trying to retire without the savings that they'd hope. So we see Alice of all shapes and sizes, and it's important to remember that there are many Alice stories. So this is one of my favorite graphs, and I think sums up our research in one image. The blue column is the household survival budget for a family of 4 with 2 kids in childcare in New Jersey. It adds up to over $100,000, just the basics of housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, small technology line, and then Alice pays taxes. So you can see how out of whack the federal poverty level is at $30,000 compared to those actual costs on the ground at over $100,000. And then to put that in context and why this is such a challenge is the gold column. And here we have 2 of the most common occupations in New Jersey and actually across the country, personal care aides and a stock worker. So those jobs working full-time year-round cannot support that family of 4. And I think it's really important to see this just clear data that it's a structural problem in our economy, that these wages do not match the cost. So it's not that these workers are lazy or have a moral failing or are not trying hard. It's that the wages don't support these basic costs. We also compare this to a couple other measures, and you can see that the AMI and supplemental poverty level also fall short of capturing the full magnitude of hardship. Next slide. So just to call out one of the common workers and just to get a sense of also thinking about the full topic for today's meeting, child care workers earning $14.60 on average median hourly wage. But here's a job that we need in our economy, the workforce behind the workforce, enabling a lot of parents able to work. 41% are below the Alice threshold. So this helps show the conundrum that we're in, that childcare workers are Alice and need a higher wage, and yet Alice families can't afford to pay a higher wage. And so we do have some industries and some sectors where the capitalist economics don't always work out. And I appreciate the innovation and the creativity that's happening across the network of United Ways and beyond to fill in some of these gaps. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that from my colleague, Michelle Rohrs, in just a minute. Next. I just wanted to call out, looking at this over time, the dark blue line is the poverty rate. And you can see that that number has been pretty flat in our country since 2010 till 2023 is our latest data. The trend line goes out a little bit further, so you can see it's pretty flat. The number of Alice households has continued to tick up. And I think it's important to recognize this is happening through recovery from the recession, through COVID, through post-COVID. It's happening different presidential administrations, that all different economic times and political times have not been able to change the trajectory of this trend line. And hence, kind of the call to action today is not only do you need to keep doing what you're doing, you need to do more of it. It's going to take everyone to change this trend line. Next. We do a lot of breaking down by demographics, so age, race, ethnicity, and one that might be very interesting to this group is household composition. So wanting just to show you a couple things that are on the website, but really to drive you there. So next slide. We have our data at the state level, at the county level, and even at the local level. So I think a lot of folks like to see the big picture and then drill down to see what's happening in your local area. Next. So all that and more are on our website, unitedforalice.org. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Michelle Roars, who's going to talk about one of our premier programs that we've used the Alice data, and she's going to walk you through how we use the data to help drive us to a really successful outcome, and all the tools and might give you some ideas of how you can use them too. So Michelle?
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Certainly, there is a lot of information on the United for Alice website, so I invite you to visit there, when you have a moment later. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share with you some of the helpful tools through an example of how they've been used for one of our projects that we've been implementing over the last 5 years. As we know, early childhood education and development is the foundation for success later in life, and yet the system of childcare is in peril. Childcare workforce is strained, and parents can't afford the high cost of childcare, and often compromising their ability to work. And this certainly has an impact on our communities and the economy. So we developed this program called United in Care to address these multifaceted issues. Our work focuses on improving childcare for children, for working parents, and for the childcare workforce. Via this integrated, multi-generational, and multi-dimensional network approach, we connect childcare and early education centers with home-based providers. And our focus and priority is to ensure that children have access to affordable, high-quality care and early education. So by creating, oops, I think we're on the wrong slide here. Oops, there. So by creating these networks, we've already had the opportunity to increase access for more children that otherwise would not have care. United in Care is network of support. We've attracted and supported budding entrepreneurs as they open up their new home-based programs, which further has increased availability in communities of needs. We're currently operating in 4 networks across the state of New Jersey with 33 home-based providers and 4 childcare centers. We've been able to support special needs children through some of these programs as well, with some of the specialized training that we've been able to offer. We're increasing affordability for Alice families by providing them with tuition assistance. We've offered $2.6 million in scholarships to over 93 families. And we see more and more families who don't qualify for the state's subsidy, and yet they're financially in need of help. So we fill this critical gap and further ensure that we're able to help these families maintain their employment. This also gives us critical information to be able to allow us to advocate for extending the eligibility criteria for the Child Care State Subsidy program. Also, ensuring that home-based providers, part of our program is ensuring that the home-based providers get registered with the state of New Jersey. And this action in of itself allows for client families to access the subsidy when in fact they are eligible. So these are some really important features of the work that we're doing. We're also focused on working hard to maintain and recruit childcare staff in this very challenging economy. Working with childcare center directors to support fair wages and to utilize other benefits and incentives to attract and maintain employees. Some of this is also highlighted in our United for Alice at Work efforts. State-supported retention and hiring bonuses have been helpful, but they're not always solving the problems. While centers have empty classrooms and waiting lists, they struggle to find staff to operate their classrooms, and therefore many are not even operating at their full capacity. So there remains high demand for services and a high demand for additional workforce. We're thrilled to be raising the quality of our programs through the United in Care networks. We promote support through the participation in the Grow New Jersey Kids Quality Improvement Rating Program. And through this, we've actually been able to help many of our providers reach the highest levels of the quality star rating programs, which in turn, this gives them the opportunity for increased subsidy rate pay. As in New Jersey, the higher the eligibility, I'm sorry, the higher the level of rating, the higher the level of subsidy payment. And so this actually helps to keep our businesses sustainable as well. And finally, with all of this, we're seeing firsthand the positive effects of parents who report that they're having the ability to be able to maintain their employment as a result of having sustainable and reliable childcare. So I invite you again to visit the United for Alice website. Some of the Alice tools that we've used along the way to help us with this effort. Please advance to the next slide. In general, we've been using the general ALICE data to be able to identify what the percentages of ALICEs in any particular community. So one of the communities that we're working in is Phillipsburg, New Jersey, and they currently have a percentage of 55% of folks that are living below the ALICE threshold. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, go back to the last one. The Allison Focus on Children report is a special report that helped establish the need in New Jersey. 42% of children in New Jersey live in households that are below the ALICE threshold. And while other reports are helpful with the stats on child care workers, this particular report has given us deeper insights as to what's going on in the space of children and families in our communities. Next slide. The Alice Income Asset Tool, this is an easy way for us to check for our eligibility criteria for our Alice Childcare Tuition Scholarships. We also use this tool to help us with our Alice in Crisis eligibility programs. And so this is something that's really been useful because you can drill down and type in the exact information about the community, the level of income and expenses that families have. And this helps us tremendously to help us with those guidelines. Next slide, please. Furthermore, there's a legislative district tool, and we've been able to successfully attract significant state and federal appropriations through utilization of this tool to better understand what the needs are in particular legislative districts. This tool can help drill down specifically ALICE by states, by federal districts. And again, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, breakdowns by different demographic criteria, race, ethnicity, and the like. So I hope that you'll be able to take time to find your own district and take some information away from that. Next slide, please. And additionally, we have this robust Alice in Action database where we're continuing to gather many examples of Alice in Action across the country. You can search by topic, by target population, by geography. There's a wealth of information here about what others are doing across the country. And not only is this a place where you can access information, but we also invite you to add to this list with your ongoings as well. I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie for the final tool.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I encourage you to visit the website and learn about all different ways that other people have used the data, but I hope that you'll come up with your own. If you can go to the next slide. Our goal is to get it into the hands of people who are doing great work. And so we hope the Alice in Action will give you some ideas on our economic viability dashboard. We actually have an action planner with different best practices around Alice in work, housing, and community resources. So lots for you to explore, and I look forward to hopefully keeping in touch with many of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Michelle. What rich, and important information that you were sharing. There is a vibrant chat going on in the chat section, as well as there's some questions in the Q&A box. I encourage everyone to continue to use those so that we can engage. But I'm now going to, given time, I'm going to turn very specifically to our local experts to share what they are doing in their communities using Alice. So first up, I would like to welcome Ken who again is the president and CEO of United Way of Frederick County, Maryland. So Ken, welcome to the conversation. We're looking forward to hearing about your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marjorie. And thank you to Stephanie and the entire team at the United for Alice group. Let me tell you just how transformational the Alice report has been in Frederick County. It's difficult for us to even quantify this, but I can tell you that in our community, the Alice report has been adopted in every level of government, ranging from our most rural communities to our more urban populations, from our county executive to the mayors of our small towns to government agencies. And to our local funder community, and certainly at United Way and our local nonprofits. This has changed the way that we look at poverty, and we're able to quantify it too. So that is just transformational for us. Next slide, please. Baseline for us, we always baseline when I'm doing these presentations about where is Frederick County and what we look like as far as a Alice population. First, Frederick County, Maryland is a rather rural community. We have some urban aspects in the city of Frederick, but we get real rural real fast. We are at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. We are the transition between the mountains and the eastern Piedmont. Absolutely gorgeous community. I highly recommend everyone visiting. I've been living here for a long time, been working at United Way now for almost 10 years. But I think it's really important for us as my colleagues talk, keep in mind who might be an urban population, largely urban population, and who is a rural population, because there are some aspects of our populations that may be a little bit different. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a moment. Next slide, please. So here we are, baseline, Frederick County, we're about 107,000 households total. We are the largest geographic county in the city of, in the state of Maryland. We are also have the fastest growing population. And ever since COVID, this has been the case. We saw a large number of households moving from our more urban communities in Montgomery County, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, and matriculating westward as remote work came on. We have seen a lot of that in Frederick County, Maryland, but we are not without our challenges, and certainly the growth has been a significant challenge for our community in keeping up with that growth. But of all the households, in Frederick County, about 1/3, or what we would consider Alice, either in poverty or above poverty and below the Alice below the Alice threshold. 33%, 1/3 of our community can't afford a basic cost of living. And as you all know, that has tremendous implications on the way our families function and the way they survive. Next slide, please. Let's take a look over time. Let's take a look at our race and ethnicity, because we focus a lot of our work is focused on how we are approaching our communities, and measuring that in our very specifically and strategically of how we are approaching various communities, racial and ethnic communities in Frederick County. So you can see we have high concentrations of Alice households. Almost 50% of those who are Black or Hispanic are unable to afford a basic cost of living. At 21% of Asians, and biracial or multiracial at 38%. But then you look at Caucasians, white folks at 30%. But I want you to look at the numbers on the top of those bar graphs. And as you look at that, as you move from left to right, you're going to see something that is very distinct about the population of Frederick County. And this is not unique among rural counties. We are heavily, heavily concentrated in the Caucasian community. And I'll say this a few times as I go through this, the further rural you get, the more Caucasian you get. And as a county United Way, we can't just focus on the city of Frederick. We have to look at the entire county. And there are distinct challenges with this. Next slide, please. This puts it into even greater context of all the Alice households in Frederick County. This is by population. So as a rural community, and as a rural community United Way, we have to be very strategic about how we are allocating our funds and our resources at our local United Way. And for that matter, our local government has to do the same thing. We cannot ignore one population for another, but there's some levers we can pull, and there's some way that we can bring historical equity to the picture here. And I'm going to get to that. Kind of my last slide is going to talk about this a little bit more, because our goal is to bring services and disrupt historical trends that we have seen in our various races throughout our community, and it is significant in a rural community like Frederick County. Next slide, please. So let's get into solutions, and I'm going to come back to data in a minute. But let's talk about solutions. We have identified really 3 areas in our community that are the major pain points. And believe there are more pain points for Alice households than 3, but we've identified 3 specific that we have the capacity to work on, and we can have a unique touch point in our community. I'm going to start in the middle there. Actually, I'm going to start on the right-hand side, pathways to careers. This is our developing area. This is not exactly where we want it to be. This is our area of growth at our local United Way in Frederick County. We have a continuum here that kind of focuses on wages and increasing wages, ranging from FAFSA efforts to a very interesting program a national program that some of you may be involved with, Getting Ahead. We are our local Getting Ahead sponsor. We're really satisfied with that program. And of course, our Ride United network. I'm going to get to back in the middle. Let's go to one slide left, because this is a part of particular pride. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, you can go back to the same slide. My apologies. I gave confusing terminology. I'm going to go into the middle of this chart here. Talk about our pathway to home ownership, because we have identified the stabilization of housing as a primary goal of ours, and specifically opportunity for our Alice households to own a home. So we have built a continuum of match savings, budget coaching, credit cafes, and VITA kind of leading to that home ownership. And we have had 34 homeowners, Alice homeowners, who never, in their wildest dreams, thought that they could be homeowners. Our program helped make it happen. In vast majority of instances, they are paying less than mortgage than what they were for rent. The biggest barrier were 2, getting past credit issues, and 2, just having enough cash available to put down payments and closing costs. We're able to bring some funds and ideas to that picture, and we're really proud of that. Not a single one of our 34, not a single one has defaulted on their mortgage. And we have been doing this program for 10 years. We are extremely proud of that. But now we're going to jump into pathway to transportation. I got a few minutes left. Going to have to blow through this quickly. I'm going to really focus. Our whole idea of this pathway is to put someone in a car. Look, I'm the person that wants to see fewer cars on the road, but we're dealing with problems now, and our problems now is that our Alice households in a rural community have to get to work, and if they have to have their own car, they're going to have their own car, and we're going to have to help them. So we have a matching program to help bring that car to fruition for these individuals, and it really starts with that bottom left-hand box called the Ride United Network. Next slide, please. We can go to the next slide. Next slide. So a Ride United network is a microtransit option that we have innovated with the help of United Way Worldwide to bring to Frederick County. We are providing free or discounted transportation to thousands of households in Frederick County. We have a robust public transportation system in our rural community, but it ain't enough. And we have to have some flexible options as well. And Ride United Network has been a big part of that. So health, employment, economic stability, food access, education, legal needs, these are all eligible rides for Alice households to gather transportation to get where they need to go. Next slide, please. We have a robust transition back in the data. We have a robust program that ranges from providing the ride to collecting an incredible amount of data on a monthly basis for analysis so that we can determine if there are any gaps or are there any changes in the program and make immediate changes to how the program is being affected in the community. Next slide, please. We have set 3 priorities in the coming year for Ride United Network. That's invest in local providers, reach rural populations, and balance rides for Alice balance rides by Alice demographics. Next slide, please. Total rides provided. We've provided about 31,000 rides to date. So we have 2 providers. We have Lyft Rideshare, and we've got local nonprofits. Because of our data collection analysis, we're able to determine who are our local providers. We want to invest locally, so we've been able to ramp up the 32% of our providers being local providers and then Lyft carrying the balance. Next slide, please. Our objective is to get into the rural community, and there are huge challenges. I could speak for hours about the challenges to get into rural communities, but one of them is transportation. We have a growing effort to get into the rural communities, and the data is making it possible for us to be able to analyze our effectiveness in that area. Next slide, please. And here's where we are today. In the blue, that was the chart you saw before. You saw the individuals in the highest concentration in the white population, and then the yellow is where we are with the Ride United network. And you can see that we are balancing out by and large in more heavily concentrating programmatic efforts in our communities of color, but that presents a huge challenge for us because that means that what this data clearly shows is that we are underrepresented in the Caucasian community. And what that really means is we're not doing a good enough job of getting outside the city of Frederick. That's my time today. Thank you so much. This was a great opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was such rich data and information, and deeply appreciate how you're looking at data to drive your solutions and your strategies. Really, really important. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to welcome Scott to share the work that he is doing. Again, he is the Senior Director of Research and Evaluation, Community Impact at the United Way of the National Capital Area here in the DMV. So welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Marjorie, and thank you to everyone for having us here today. Welcome to the National Capital Area. It's known also as the Greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, about 50 miles due south of our great friends, neighbors, and collaborators in Frederick County that you were just visiting with. We're the home to the federal government, excellent cultural institutions and museums on our national mall, and a complex geography when we talk about wealth, stability, and opportunity for Alice. So spanning across 15 jurisdictions, 2 states, and the District of Columbia, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about how we're leveraging the Alice data to talk about programs. On the next slide, we'll show you a little bit of the data as it's broken down. Home to just over 5 million people, that makes 2 million households. 80% of them commuting each day into DC with an average time of commuting of 33.4 minutes, which gives us the somewhat honorable distinction of having the worst traffic in the country per Consumer Affairs last week. And I think our neighbors in Frederick County are no strangers to that as well. We are also among the highest medium in-house household incomes in the country, which are reflected in our high-quality schools, our strong community institutions, and all the resources that are available to us in the region. But also that means higher and even higher costs of living. We are home to 450,000 federal workers in the national capital area, and 106,000 of them are living below the ALICE threshold. So there are so many great things to speak about our region, but there is much still unseen and overlooked in terms of financial hardship. As Stephanie Hoops mentioned a little earlier, the official measures of poverty have hovered for a decade in our region between 8 and 13% of the population. But we see that there are 3 to 4 times that number who are part of ALICE. And that's why United Way of the National Capital Area has made ALICE the who we serve in our mission. And I'd love to show you a little bit more about the value that this data brings and shows up in our work. So on the next slide here, we can see that research from Brookings and Urban Institute have shown that there's a persistent wealth gap in this relatively urban region. Despite having great affluence and historically resilient populations that have built and retained generational wealth amid centuries of systemic disenfranchisement and marginalization, this is why it's so critical to tell the story of ALICE in our region. On the surface, we have every resource available, but there remain these concentrated areas of financial hardship that the official data sets don't show. And that's what has been termed by the Northern Virginia Health Foundation as islands of disparity, where there are high poverty rates, limited educational attainment, and poor access to healthcare. So as we've seen in the data that was presented by the United for ALICE team, the difference between what it actually costs to live, work, and play in the modern economy and what some of the most common occupations for ALICE workers to be bringing in shows a delta of $40,000 between what they're bringing in annually and what it costs to support their families. So ALICE reveals that these islands of disparity are actually much bigger and felt by so many more families across the region, who they themselves might be saying, hey, well, I work full time. I pay my taxes. I pay to put my children in childcare, and I pay for my car to take me to my job. Why is it that I still can't get by? And we feel that the ALICE data is a real important tool in being able to explain it to both the folks who are helping support our populations, but also ALICE themselves, who also kind of don't even understand that they fall into a population that is difficult and much more challenging than meets the eye. So with that, I'd like to briefly take you through 3 examples of how the ALICE data is actually showing up in our work, both at the systems level and at the programs level. On the next slide, I'll take you first to the largest county of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Fairfax County, home to over 1 million people. And they themselves at the systems level from the county and municipal leadership have gone all in leveraging ALICE data and integrating it into their population and demographic research. So this serves as a foundation for those targeted strategies across all of their programs and initiatives, whether it's neighborhood community services or the Department of Family and Social Services. They are really taking the ALICE data as a starting point to understand how they can support residents that are facing these enduring challenges. And by centering the economic mobility for their essential workers, right? Highlighting the fact that 1 in 3 households in Fairfax are ALICE or living below the federal poverty level, and that 50%, half the workers in the most common jobs can't make ends meet. The data underscores this urgency of improving pathways to economic mobility, expanding the eligibility benefits for these programs to help keep the local economy running. Because really, we all do better when we all do better. And that's why the use of ALICE data positions upward mobility as both a moral and an economic imperative, because we're mobilizing public, private, nonprofit sectors to collaborate together in dismantling these systemic barriers and building a county where every resident can thrive, regardless of race or income level. And that's how the data really kind of shows up at that systems level, because it becomes a shared responsibility across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to improve the conditions for working families, supporting those initiatives, those program initiatives, to understand here are the program initiatives that are going to be able to support our most vulnerable, and here's how all of you can contribute towards expanding that pool so that there's more resources to help the ALICE populations over time. And what that ends up doing, as you'll see in the next couple of examples, is not only strengthen the local economy, but also community well-being. So on the next slide, I'll slide us over to Washington, D.C. And in the District of Columbia, as you can see with the concentration of ALICE population to the east side of the district in our what we call Wards 7, 5, 7, and 8, it's a great historically resilient population. That is not having a sort of equitable access to resources that are available in this otherwise resource-rich area. And what United Way National Capital Area has done in partnership with the Greater Washington Urban League is actually launch a very innovative pilot that has focused on an initiative for improving outcomes of a very specific population. What we're doing actually is that we are partnering with Black fathers who are facing a very preventable barrier. What they're finding themselves in is that for Black fathers who are in arrears of their child support payments, face a economic and social emotional position which leaves them more isolated and unable to access the resources and support. And we use the ALICE data to help understand where that support is needed most. And recruiting these Black fathers, we're addressing two things at once. One, at the individual level, we're helping build out the bridges of reconnecting with the family, of being an involved member of the raising of their child and helping support their academic, emotional, social, and emotional learning and their growth in the family. And what we're doing so is we're doing that through this innovative piece of addressing both the economic barriers of having those child support payments, any administrative or legal pathways that they need to navigate, but also the social emotional piece of being part of the belonging and finding companionship and support among other peers within this group and the cohort-based model that we're achieving. And the more important thing is that we're addressing this by leveraging the ALICE data, by leveraging this idea of meeting the Black father where they are and bringing the holistic wraparound services approach in our partnership, that we're going to address the more insidious systemic barrier that we find, which is a negative stereotype around the role of the Black father. Because ultimately, in looking at the research, there's very little research that speaks to the actual evidence of the Black father being absent, but in fact says that among disaggregated racial groups, Black fathers actually tend to be more committed, as committed or more committed than other groups in terms of their motivation and engagement in raising their families. So what we're trying to do is at the individual level is shift the narrative, both for the Black father who may have internalized some of these expectations or isolation or barriers that they might find insurmountable. And then we're also targeting the larger RIT system by engaging partners across the way, from the highest levels of municipal government and leadership all the way down to our community partners around shifting the narrative about what it means to be engaged in your family. And the ALICE data is really manifesting at the local level. Whereas I was just citing that the county municipality is integrating across all of its programs to expand eligibility, we're also diving down. And that's what I love about United for ALICE's ALICE data, is that you can get down to the census tract. We can get down to a block by block understanding of where that financial hardship is most concentrated and being able to target the resources so that we can really bring that universal approach to lifting all ships at the same time with the tide. Finally, I would love to shift over to Montgomery County in Maryland, neighboring county to our friends in Frederick. And what I love about this is that in the practical points of that, ALICE data could be fueling the economic engine that will bring all of us back to greater inclusion and greater prosperity. Well, whereas by the traditional measures, poverty-designated residents qualify for most services, what we understand is that ALICE individuals, because of their income level, end up not being eligible for a lot of these programs because there's just this assumption that they're able to be economically sufficient. And that's the whole point of this, is that with this data, we're understanding that this population, the ALICE population, have been historically excluded from it. And what the Workforce Development Board in Montgomery County said, enough. We're expanding the eligibility and designing targeted programs to help support this critical group. We are actually going to carve out specific resources to make sure that we are absolutely addressing this overseen and underrepresented group. And how they're doing that is they're bringing ALICE as a metric of their economic impact. They're now using the income thresholds that you saw earlier within their way of assessing how well they're doing and engaging the workforce and in driving more people towards family sustaining jobs. And they're measuring their success by helping the residents surpass that particular benchmark. So what I've seen is that if you can get a declining ALICE population, you can drive down that population that are living below the ALICE threshold, you're going to have a healthier workforce and a stronger local economy. And the evidence bears it forward is that the Montgomery County Workforce Development Board has actually been very successful in getting green lights across all of their metrics. What they've been doing is they've been aligning the workforce goals with this economic reality and tracking progress for stronger communities. So for what that means in real terms is that a lot of the federally funded workforce development programs have been using as metrics to say, okay, here's how we're driving people into the system, and here's how we're going to be able to determine long-term community stability. Montgomery County has been driving 942 people into these programs over the past several months, over the past year, and that has been leading this state of Maryland. Over 7,764 residents in total under both of those programs have exceeded all 18 measures of economic stability and workforce development. So that is to show that if you bring the system into existing programs, you can actually increase not only the quantity, but the quality of what you're delivering for it. Over 2,700 residents in the past year have been connected to these employment through this particular program and how these metrics have been becoming. So the most vulnerable residents of Montgomery County have actually been identified, met, and served thanks to the ALICE data that's been showing up in our programs. So to wrap it up for us, what we're looking forward to as the United Way in the National Capital Area is that we have a really strong focus on local, trusted, community-based institutions. We understand that there is a rippling impact and effect of recent cuts to our federal workforce across the region, and we're laser focused on making sure that we're supporting them in partnership with a lot of the great programs that local municipalities have launched already. And then we're making sure that when we're talking about how we're going to be able to shift the outcomes for both the federal workforce and the ALICE population, we want to make sure that it's outcome-based and narrative-driven, so that we're actually attacking it both at the individual and the systems level. Because ultimately, what we want to ensure for our ALICE population is their economic mobility, their autonomy, and preserving the dignity of each individual and family deserves, and being able to support themselves and achieve a better future for themselves and their families. With that, we look forward to hearing from you, connecting with you. Make sure that you can get onto our next our website, unitedwaynca.org, and continuing the conversation. And I'll hand it back to Marjorie. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Scott. What a rich, depth conversation and presentation that you shared. I really appreciate the way in which you shared how the ALICE data is disrupting assumptions and shifting the narrative, but also you were able to share how ALICE data can be used in very diverse communities throughout the region and really intentionally to drive towards very specific solutions that are both individual as well as systemic. So thank you so much for a great presentation. And now we're looking forward to another amazing presentation. Donna is going to be joining us. She's the president and CEO of United Way of Pierce County. And we're lifting up this work intentionally because of some of the outcomes that they're seeing. So Donna, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marjorie, and thanks to Ken and Scott for sharing what their United Ways are doing in their local communities focused on Alice. First, I really want to echo what Ken said, that the Alice report really has been transformational for our United Way as well. You know, everyone talks about Alice in our community, from our, city council members to our county executive to state legislators, as well as our legislators at the federal level. We focused on Alice starting in 2016, when we really wanted to lean into lifting families out of poverty. And while Alice families, are above the poverty level, they still struggle, as you've heard today. You can go to the next slide. So what we did is we put together a bold goal. We came up with a bold goal to lift 15,000 households out of poverty by 2028 and into self-sufficiency. And we really consider ourselves a issue cause related United Way. And our cause is to focus on united, we will end poverty one family at a time. We know that this is aspirational, but we wanted to put a stake in the ground and say, this is what we're going to focus on, and we're going to focus on Alice families. Now, this 15,000 number was a point in time for us. Back when we started and had the Alice report here in Washington State, there were 103 households that were Alice in Pierce County. About 14,800 of those households were households with children that were Alice. So we just rounded it up to 15,000, but we've been chipping away at that with all of our various programs, and I'll be highlighting one of those today. You can go to the next slide. So what does Pierce County in Washington look like? We have a population right now of 356,000 households. And in Tacoma, which is our largest city, there's 189,000. And again, all of this is based on the 23 census. 10% is poverty level, 25% Alice. So that's 35% of the households in Pierce County are Alice. And unfortunately, it continues to grow. We've got 117, well, back in the last year, it was 117,000 Alice families. The number has gone up to 124,000. So we're seeing an increase, and with only a slight increase in households altogether. Then when you start to peel back, the numbers, you see, as we do in so many communities, that disproportionately communities of color are Alice. So in Pierce County, 50% of the Black households are Alice. 42% of the Hispanic 42% of the Hispanic households are Alice, and 46 Native American. And of the Alice households, 33.8% are white. Single head of households, we've got 63% are single, but we're also seeing a growing number of single head of male households that are Alice as well. One of the other things that came out of the most recent report, growing number of households that are Alice above 65. So we've got to start paying attention to that dynamic, and also the number of households that are 25 and under. So that's where you get children. So 50% of our Alice households are below age 25. Household survival budget for Pierce County, $123,000 a year for a family of four with two kids in daycare. And then the stability budget is $168,000 a year. And what we know is that the median household income for Pierce County is about $68,000. So families are always struggling. You can go to the next slide. So some of the data and the messaging, a significant part of our work, as with what Scott said and what Ken said, is using the data and also using the people. what we want to do is make sure that folks that are living it, the lived experience, that they can tell their story. The things that, things that we lift are the things that we lift up, excuse me. Alice families are a significant part of who we serve. And so when we think about Alice, and Alice is Alice because of, they're just financially strapped, no matter how hard they work. The main thing that we see is the mismatch between increasing costs and wages that aren't keeping up, which is a story across the country. In Washington, for instance, 24.2% of working age population had full-time jobs. So 20 most common jobs here in Pierce County, on average, their wages are at the $23 mark. Some are a little bit higher. But again, there's a few that are over that even $50,000 mark. So with that said, hourly wage of $20 an hour would equate to about $40,000 a year. So it's no surprise here in Pierce County, at least 30% struggle to make ends meet. And again, looking at that family of four, that's surviving is at 123,000. It doesn't add up for families. The other thing is just about advocating. We use data a lot to advocate on behalf of Alice. We used to do advocacy down in Olympia once a year. What we're doing is expanding that where it's year-round advocacy. We've got to continue to, advocate not only to our legislators, but to the business sector and to anyone who is impacted by Alice. So creating opportunities for Alice, again, sharing their stories is really important. I think it was Scott that said, this isn't a moral imperative, but it really is an economic imperative, and we have to keep that in mind, and that's the message that we continue to drill down. We're investing in solutions, our advocacy efforts, cash as a strategy, wealth building initiatives where we're looking at integrated approaches and coaching models, and then building that bridge. How do you connect those Alice families to different kinds of supports and navigation? So the data really does matter. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to share with you one of our key initiatives. We had the opportunity to partner with City of Tacoma initially to be a part of Mayors for Guaranteed Income, where 110 families received $500 a month. And we worked with the University of Pennsylvania and collected a great deal of research to really show that cash in people's hands, unconditional cash works. Lots of reports out there, even the latest there's a report that was in the New York Times the other day that actually says it doesn't work, but what we're seeing, what the evaluation and the research is showing overall that these work. So this helped to inform GRIP 2.0, which was funded by the state of Washington, $1.9 million we were awarded. And again, we were awarded this because we're focused on Alice and the data was saying these kinds of things work. So go to the next slide. So our programming, we had key partners in addition to the state. We had the City of Tacoma, the county, plus we had a 10-member cross-sector steering committee. 12-month guaranteed cash, $500 a month. We targeted 175 participants that were Alice single income earners in Tacoma and in outlying areas of Tacoma. Did individual benefits counseling provided to the recipients, both onboarding and offboarding. Some of the expected outcomes, we wanted to see, increase in financial stability, child well-being, and workforce participation. We can go to the next slide. I think I'm running out of time. So some of the highlights, and these reports I can make available: reduced parental stress, improved family harmony, increased quality with children. Parents felt less guilt and were not only able to meet children's basic needs, but also able to afford those small wants. The housing situation improved. Families were able to save money. In terms of childcare, enabled some to reduce their working hours for a more balanced life, while others increased their working hours because they were able to get better childcare. And they had better access to transportation. Now, there were structural barriers as well, limited access for some. The structural barriers, for instance, if based on if you were receiving any kind of public assistance and, you were making $1 more, you saw your benefits impacted. So it was a whole issue of benefits cliff that families had to deal with as well. And, the idea is that people did start saving money. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Some of the other findings, people spent money on food. That was the largest piece of this. 53% of the participants spent money on food, gas and transportation, secondhand discount stores. So they were using this extra money to just provide those basics again to their families. So go to the next slide. This is just one of the quotes from one of the families that, I felt so much less month-to-month stress since the program started. It feels like I have some room to breathe. We hear that time and time again, and we hear a lot of hope with these families as well. So the last slide. Some of the current realities, and again, some of this has been talked about throughout this morning or afternoon for a lot of you, change the narrative about poverty and working families. We've got to continue to look at what the narrative is. When people see and hear from Alice families, it's so critical. Building that public and political will, especially with all of the changes at the federal level that are going to impact Alice families. Advocate, advocate, advocate. I mean, we have to do that collectively. We've got to engage the business sector, all sectors, partnerships, collaborations. You heard about a lot of these. Everything that we do is in partnership with the community. Champions are key. The Speaker of the House for the state of Washington. It's because of her that we were able to get this $1.9 million. It's the champions in our local communities that we're able to get the grants to support the work that we do and to use that Alice data. And then inviting those with the lived experience to be a part of the conversation. They have to be at the table, not just to listen to them, but to be a part of the solution. So I thank you. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Donna, and another really rich presentation. I so appreciate the way that you brought in the qualitative data and the importance of that, and making certain that people with lived experience are at the table in important and authentic ways. So now I'd like to invite all of the panelists to come back on screen, and we have a few minutes for Q&A, and I would love to lift up a question, a really important question that was in the Q&A and was responded to, but would love for everyone to hear a little bit more about this nuance. And that is around partnerships with states. And Stephanie and Michelle, you had mentioned, the importance of the data at the state level, and then reference the partnerships with states. Can you share a little bit more about how those are developed? And then Iola, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what you're seeing across the country in those partnerships. So thank you.
So yeah, thanks so much. And we have the data for every state in the country at the top level. And then for our partner states that we work with on a more detailed level, we have, that county, subdivision, zip code, local level, as well as all the demographics and the tools. So if your state is not on there, please feel free to reach out, and we may already be working with your state, or we would love to make sure that your state is part of United for Alice partnership. And it's done in all kinds of ways. United Ways are some of our best partners, but we have support from as I mentioned, foundations and other community stakeholders that help make it possible. So we're happy to work with you and be creative on how that can happen.
Thank you. Michelle, anything to add here?
Yeah, and I'll just add that on the state level with partnering with our state officials, we definitely get really involved with our community-based human service advisory committees, as well as have a lot of conversations with our legislative leaders. We also participate on many of the state advisory committees, including the Child Care Advisory Committee, workforce development boards and things on that level. So partnerships are really key, and sharing out the ALICE data in those avenues, it has been really critically important. And I think that that's where we've been able to leverage those relationships, leverage the data, and ultimately, transact some, some initiatives and programming that we've been able to run. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so here and asking that question, you get another question, and that is from someone and says, how can I get Alice to work with New York families? So that's a very specific question. And it sounds like that person is interested in knowing what data is available in New York.
So New York is a fabulous partner, and we have an amazing array of data for New York, and we work with a lot of folks. So please reach out to me, and I'd be happy to connect you with some of those folks. And if you have, someone in particular that you would like us to connect with, we're always interested.
And so the advice to all of these questions is to contact you, Stephanie, about states specificity.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Okay. And Iola, what
Marjorie,
would you like to
yes.
add here?
If just to build on Donna's point around state level policy and advocacy, I would strongly encourage you, if you're not already working with the United Way State Associations, that is a pivotal, and critical part of our infrastructure in terms of a concerted advocacy and policy response that can make a difference, both in terms of what resources, emergency resources that states may make available to cover in a short term the shortfalls that we're going to see in the social services sector, as well as to advocate, their congressional leaders, to advocate and lobby them. We've just seen what difference that can make. For instance, with after school, where that funding was paused and subsequently released because there were Republican senators 10 of them, that advocated based on the impact it was going to have in their states. So I think that's a critical strategy for us, and data was pivotal to that, to be able to demonstrate who were the children that were going to lose out from summer programs in not next year, but now, because their programs would have to close their doors because they were no longer able to pay after school educators. So I think that's a critical piece. And then please engage with us and our policy team at Worldwide so we can speak with a concerted voice around those policy priorities that we have in terms of Medicaid and SNAP and WIC. So, and there are tools there as well to support you in, advocating with your state and congressional leaders. So I think that is critically important in ways that we can lend our collective voice.
Very, very important. And just the blend of the data and the policy advocacy is critical to changing some of these systems and policies on behalf of families. So thank you. And just a final 30-second response to this question. What is your best advice when thinking about or using ALICE data? And I'm going to start with Ken. 30 seconds. We're short on time. Best advice.
Best advice for how to use it, or where to use it? Yeah,
how to use it.
Go to unitedforalice.org, look up your state data, get used to those visualizations. They are incredibly impactful, intuitive, and can be used in just about every setting. Then by all means, make sure your local elected officials have access to this data.
Thank you. Scott.
If I had one piece of advice about what you could take away today, is that the whole objective of what we're trying to do here is normalize ALICE. Alice themselves are self-selecting out of help. They're self-selecting out of reaching out. They are finding themselves in difficult positions and they feel like they're by themselves. These are our neighbors, our workers, our collaborators, our family, our friends. They are going to be people you're going to be talking to today. So normalize it, make it normal, make it part of the conversation. That's the whole point, right? Because if we can all get to the shared understanding that Alice is the population in need, then we can all work together to help them.
Wonderful. And Donna, would you mind closing us out on this question?
I just turned off my video. Sorry about that. Ditto, Ken and Scott, use it to change the narrative. Yeah, there's just so much out there where, there's still a lot of people that think Alice is, not working hard enough, that they need to do more of, go back and get more education, or, there's a lot of other things that, folks think negatively about Alice families. So use this data to change the narrative with business community, with your legislators, on both sides of the aisle. I think it's really, really important. And just tell the story. Tell the story of Alice. Get those with lived experience to go out with you and tell and share their story. Alice is an economic driver in our community, and we have got to keep in mind that they, again, are our neighbors. They're people that we run into every single day, and they're an important part of our community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Donna, and a perfect way to end. And so appreciate everyone for joining us for this webinar. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Ken, Scott, Stephanie, Michelle, and always, Iola. You're the best. Thank you. And I'm turning it over to Sarah to close us out. Thank you so much.
Yes, I mean, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Marjorie, for leading us through it, and Aola for being our thought partner, both of you, throughout this entire series. An incredible deep appreciation to all of the local United Ways for really kind of lifting up the stories, changing the narrative about Alice. I mean, there's been so much data in this conversation, and so some might be surprised to see so many hearts flying throughout the entire webinar, but that's because you all did such a good job of sharing data in a way that centers the faces and the lives of these children, parents, families, and really kind of highlighting the systems and structures that make it so difficult for them to get ahead, and giving us tools so that we can help to advocate collectively, as Donna said so eloquently. So thank you to all of you who joined us for today's conversation. I hope that you found it useful and inspiring as well. I hope you'll join us for the final session of GLR Week 2025 this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. Dropped the link in the chat just a second ago. Also, if you missed all of the other amazing sessions this week, I dropped a link in so you can find those on our website. We'll be posting recordings and written summaries shortly. And then we'll take a collective breath on the CGLR Leo team. During the month of August, we'll be doing some rebroadcast sessions, but with updates that we're taping this week and next, as we continue to ask the question, more hopeful futures or children as collateral damage, around some of the policy changes, funding cuts that have been happening in recent weeks and months. So I hope you'll join us for those. And then we'll be returning to live programming on September 2nd. We'll have GLR Running Tuesdays sessions at 3 p.m. Eastern every day that month, even though we've only got a couple of them highlighted on this slide. We'll also be restarting each of our monthly series, Quiz Bowl Practice Alons, Funder to Funder Conversations, and Peer Exchange Learning Conversations in September. So I hope you will join us for all of those. And again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.